This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order at 7:02. Just as a reminder to everybody, there's, about half of the screen are people that I can see, they're on video, and about half of the screen are people that are on telephones or are not somebody that can view. So when you speak, every time you speak, I want you to, state your name. That way everybody knows who's talking, whether you're on video or on the telephone. So as far as regular members go, I think we have no one that needs to be seated, correct?
Chuck, it's Garth.
Yep.
Just making sure you can hear me. I have 7:30 work. That's going to, It might require me to be on. So if you have somebody to sit it, replace me, that'd be good.
Okay. So do you want a voting capability tonight, or?
I don't know if I legitimately can, because if I end up on the phone, with my work, then I won't be able to pay much attention.
Okay. So I guess in that case, I don't have Esther here, so I think what I will do is seat John. I think I seated you for somebody last time, right? And let's see. So I'll have Butch. I'll have you sit for Garth.
Okay. Thank you, Butch.
Okay. I don't have any communications. We need to approve the minutes of the special meeting Tuesday, April 14th, 2020. Has everybody had a chance to read? If there's anybody that can make a motion to accept those minutes as they are, that would be great.
So move, Carl Falsgraf.
Second, Angie DeSanto.
Any modifications that anybody sees for those particular minutes?
Nope.
All in favor of accepting the minutes as written?
Aye.
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 Aye, Butch.
All right.
I don't think I was there. Abstained.
Okay. I'm just making sure of everybody that was there. John, you voted, right? Can
John's
you
not seated.
Okay, there.
Yep, I'm not seated.
Oh, yep. That's right. You're right. Brain problem on my end. Thank you.
And Chuck?
Yeah.
Jesse Burnham. I'm voting affirmative on passing of the minutes. I just didn't get my microphone turned on in time.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Motion passes. Hear from public. Can we unmute Paul?
Yeah, no, I'm good, Chuck. Nothing right now. Thank
Okay.
you.
I'd like to address the board.
Sure. Hear me? This is John Lippert. John, can you go ahead?
Thank you, Chuck. I'd like to make a brief statement. I'm John Lippert, the chairperson of the Board of Education. Officially, the school is on April vacation right now, believe it or not. You might think that we're on vacation the rest of the year, but that's not the case. The cafeteria is preparing lunches for over 150 families in town. Those lunches are being delivered by our bus drivers. The teachers are still responsible for their students' education. So they prepare lessons and materials, and mostly those are shared electronically, but in some cases, hard copies are produced by our para educators and included with the deliveries, the food deliveries. We're also required by the state to be ready at any time for the students' return. So the grounds and building are kept in shape by our janitorial staff. So in other words, everybody's still working, which is good because we're still paying them. They're working, in most cases, they're working reduced hours, and we're paying them the amount that they would normally be paid. We had a lot of discussion about that, of course, as a board. And you may disagree with that in theory, but we were encouraged strongly by the governor to not to lay people off, continue to provide services at the level that we always have. It seems like the right thing to do. After all, those are our neighbors, and keeping them working and keeping them paid seems appropriate. So we've talked before about how salaries and the healthcare that goes along with that is the major portion of our budget. So those will continue, and so the major portion of our budget will be spent. We do expect to recognize a tiny bit of savings this year, really from just two areas: reduced substitutes and reduced utility use. So they're not big ticket areas, but we expect to come out just a bit ahead on those two things. That would be in the range of a few thousand, not tens of thousands. As we've talked about before, we always try to guide our budget so that we end the year, with a positive 20,000 or so. That's kind of the goal in case of any last minute bills or a boiler failing or anything of that nature. To the extent that any of that money is helpful to the town, then obviously we want it to be helpful. In addition to that, Dr. Longo tells me that Joan Salati came to him earlier of her own accord, apparently, and suggested that looking at the numbers carefully, she feels that it would be appropriate for the town to buy one bus next year instead of the two that we wanted to build the fleet up to have the full number of buses and the full number of spares that we really think we should have. She feels that we'd be just fine with one less. So that's not that's not a lot of help, but it's a little bit of help as we look towards next year, and as we look towards moving forward in the budget process for next year. I think that's all I have to say. I can imagine there may be questions for me or for Dr. Longo or for Karen, our business administrator, later in the meeting, and of course we're happy to field them. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, John.
Well said, John.
Oh, thank you.
Tina, that was you?
Yes, sir. Sorry.
That's okay. So that's Tina Fredette?
Yep.
Okay. On to new business. Selectmen's update. I don't know that we have a selectman here. So the next agenda item is, we need to figure out which budgets we want to move forward for the public hearing. So I guess as a synopsis, there's a few things that we need to keep in mind. As you know, regional, I think most of you know, but I'll state it. The Regional School District 19, their Board of Education has recently acted on behalf of the people for their referendum, in lieu of their referendum. So they have passed their budget. Just so that you know, their budget went from 1920 fiscal year, the one that we're in now, went from 22,237,320 down to $22,137,370. So the impact is, you know, less on the overall 3 towns. However, based on student population, Ashford this time will have an increase of $226,559, which is roughly 3/4 of a mil impact based on the current grand list, which when you take all the factors into play, and I'm going to use rough numbers, which will drive Cheryl crazy. But roughly that equals $300,000 per mil. It's actually $299, yada, yada, yada. But anyway, if you in your mind are working with a $300,000 mill rate, you can see you take the 226, you divide it by the 300, and you end up with about 3/4 of a mil increase over last year's mill rate. So that's a given. That's something that we're dealing with. We're not voting on. That's all part of the equation. As far as the Ashford School goes, just so that you all get a synopsis, last year's budget for the Ashford School was $7,678,894. On February 20th, they came to us with a budget of $8,016,765, which was a $871,000 increase. And we decided as a board that that was a little too much for the townspeople to bear. So at that meeting, we decided that we would have liked them to look at a $220,000 decrease, which they did. And in fact, the administration came up with a plan to make that reduction. With a lot of deliberation, I was at the meeting, the Board of Education decided to come back to us requesting a $181,000 reduction, so that that was something they felt they could meet. We agreed to that, so the end result was that would have been $156,871 increase over last year's budget. So that represents roughly $500,000. The town general budget, again, just to give you a synopsis, in 1920, the current fiscal year, the budget's $3,335,047. They came to us on February 13th with a $3,414,887 budget, which was roughly an $80,000 increase. We asked them to reduce that, which they did, and then came back to us on February 27th. And one of the things that came to light at that particular meeting was that the firehouse was not being re-upped after 50 years with Eastford. And that that was quite a hit. So to keep services as they are now in the town of Ashford, the firehouse requested an increase of roughly $71,000. And so with the $71,000 increase from the firehouse and a bit of a reduction that we asked the town to take, which they did, and they found that by reducing both animal control and the rec department budget, their total budget increase over last year was $127,850, which you would have thought I'd have that mill rate increase already calculated, but I forgot. So anyway,
Chuck, Cheryl Baker, with all of the increase, the mill rate would be 1.569 mils higher.
Right. So with, as Cheryl just said, so with the, I did just figure it out. So it's about a 0.4 mil increase with the town and the firehouse over last year's budget. So if we were to accept all budgets as we had at the last meeting at Knowlton Hall, as Cheryl just said, the overall mill increase with everybody getting the budgets that they've asked for and that we had agreed to at that time, we would have a mill increase of 1.569, which translates into an overall mill rate of 37. The capital budget, the capital project does not affect the mill rate, but we can talk about the capital project as well. I would probably not be willing to take the school bus out of that budget at this point until I spoke to the selectmen about that. The school buses are outside, the actual purchases of them are outside of the school's realm, and they're within the selectmen's realm. I happen to personally agree with John Lippert that if they don't need one and they feel they don't need one, then we probably, maybe consider not getting one. However, I don't want to speak for anyone else nor the selectmen on that. So I think we need to get some clarification on that particular detail. But anyway, a synopsis of the capital budget was in 1920, it was 508,000, and out of capital non-reoccurring was 252,000 approximately. And what's proposed this year is 602 roughly, which is a $306,000 take from capital non-reoccurring. So that's about a $54,000 increase over last year. So what I think we have to decide, and what this board and this particular agenda item, which is to approve budgets for the public hearing, is we have to decide what we want to go forward with for the public hearing. We all can then make a different choice and we can modify our budget at the public hearing. But I think we need to agree on what we're going to the public with. And that's what this meeting's about. So anyway, I'm open to thoughts that any of the board members may have.
That's Carl Falsgraf. I have thoughts about the budget, and I know some people aren't going to like them, but it looks to me like we're going to end up okaying the budget. There's towns every day in the paper that are boards of finance are going to do. There was another one today, I forgot, Ellington or Tolland or somebody, where the board of finance was going to make the decision on the budget in lieu of not having a referendum because of all the rules the governor has given us. But I have a hard time. My proposal would be to, except for the fire department money and the E.O. Smith money, to freeze the town and Board of Ed budgets at last year's budget. And I think that would entail a little bit of heartache. I think employees of the two institutions would have to forego their raise for this year. But I just can't, in good conscience, bring together a $1.5 million increase on when 10% of our townspeople are unemployed and another percentage that we don't even know have taken pay cuts or are working part-time instead of full-time. And I just can't see asking them for more money so that other people get raises. And that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Carl. Anyone else?
Butch Simpson. I gotta agree with Carl because times are gonna get tough. I know what it is to be laid off and not have your, in the 60s when I was working. I know how it is to have to find money, and the taxes were nowhere near what they are today. So I agree completely. I see that some of the towns are suspending and are giving them 60 or 90 days to pay their taxes. We haven't even talked about that. I don't think that's something we have to do, but we definitely need to help people in need right now. And adding more tax for them to pay is going to be very difficult on people like in my situation, because one of the things is I lose my wife's Social Security, so I have that much less money to play with. So it is going to be a tough time, and I'm only saying that for me. I'm not talking for the rest. But if you're unemployed and you're only collecting unemployment, which is fairly good, but it ain't what you're bringing home from your paycheck, and people are definitely going to have a hard time trying to pay their bills, and that's going to be due in July, the first installment. Thank you, Butch Simpson.
Thanks, Butch. Jesse?
Yes, I agree partially with both Carl and Butch that people are going to have a very tough time coming up with their the money for taxes. However, I think about the times where we have a contractual agreement for these pay raises, so I wouldn't say as drastically as to freeze them, but maybe give them a little increase just to cover those particular pay raises, but I'm not sure what amount to put there.
Thank you. Before we go farther, I'm wondering if Dr. Longo can speak to what the contractual obligation is, and is there any flexibility? John, do you think Jim is able to hear?
I can hear you, yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, yep, there you are.
Okay, we have contracts with all the teachers, and they are getting a 2.5% pay raise. We have contracts with all of our non-certified employees, and they're somewhere around 2.5 to 2.7% pay raise. Last year, the administrators took no pay raise, and we haven't even discussed next year yet. A couple of them are scheduled for the same as the teachers. But in any event, it would be pretty difficult. I'd have to negotiate with them. I mean, there's over 100 people involved. It's hard to know if they would vote to accept that. If not, if they vote not to accept a cut in pay, which would amount to a couple thousand, $2,000 or $3,000 each in lost pay, and that compounds every year in the sense that if you lose $3,000 one year, that means that for the rest of your career, if you have another 10 years left, you lost $30,000. So I think that might be difficult to get them to vote yes on. And if I had to cut $156,000 out of our budget, that would be 3 teachers being laid off. So I'm a little bit of a loss because I don't know if they'd be willing to take a individually $2,000 or $3,000 pay cut to save a taxpayer a small amount of money. It's just a typical. It's a they're unions. They don't just give it up.
Yep. But the process, there would be a process for at least a inquiry.
Yes, there would indeed. I would have to set up negotiations with probably a board member or two, and then we would join with.
At what cost are we going to cut a teacher? We're losing a teacher and we're losing education to the students. I'm sorry.
Certified teachers union representatives and the non-certified representatives, and we would negotiate.
I can't see losing a teacher. I can't. Our teachers are tight as it is right now. I'm sorry, Tina Fredette.
Who is speaking? Who is speaking?
Yeah, Valerie, that was Tina Fredette. Just as a reminder, when you go to speak, you need to announce who you are each time you go to speak. We have a recording secretary who's doing this on the phone, and so she needs to know who's speaking so that you can be represented in the minutes. Thank you for your thoughts. Yeah, no worries, Tina. I understand we're all trying to figure this out. So that no one's being chastised, just reminded. That's all.
Thank you.
Hey, Chuck, John Lippert, could we let Dr. Longo know that we missed the last few sentences of his comments?
Oh yeah. This is Dr. Longo again. What I was saying was that I would be more than willing to negotiate with the teachers, but when you're dealing with unions and they're going to call their state union representatives in and everything, you're asking them to forego a couple of $1,000s, but remember that couple of $1,000s becomes part of their base pay, and every year for the rest of their career they're going to be earning a couple $1,000s less, and because they'll never make that up. So what'll happen is, if you have 10 more years left in your career, you will have given up $20,000. I think it's going to be, I know unions, I know the state unions, I think it's going to be difficult. I will do my best, and I'm sure the board members will join me in doing their best if we have to, but I would really hope that, we've already made some substantial cuts, and I would really hope that we could stick by those.
Thank you.
Carl Falsgraf?
Go ahead, Carl.
I would say that we're going to be in a much better position next year with less money going to Region 19, that we could just say to put off the pay raise for a year. That way they're not going to be losing it compounded over 10 years or however long they work for Ashford.
Well, that would make, it's Dr. Longo again, that might make a great difference if that's the case.
So the only
John
thing
Kopak.
hold on, John, 1 second. Chuck Funk, Chair of the Board of Finance. The only thing I want to be a little careful with is I agree with Carl that next year Region 19 is going to be a big difference. But those are dollars that I don't want to count on until they're actually real. And I do think that they're real. The projections are real. But until we get there, I'm not sure we want to bank moves this year to balance out next year. There's too many unknowns given where the economy is right at the moment. So John, go ahead.
Thank you, John Kopak. It's a great idea, and if the money comes through next year for the savings for Region 19, that's great. But even still, we can't promise that money because ultimately it's up to the voters.
I agree.
We can relay our intentions, but we can't make promises like that. The other side here, there's two questions here. One, we've heard from the Board of Education. What about on the town side? Is there any savings happening because of money we're just simply not spending during this these times right now?
The only one that I think is on this board at this meeting right at the moment that can maybe speak to that a little bit would be Cheryl. But my guess would be, again, when we're talking about, either, air quote savings at the school or air quote savings at the town because of the Corona thing, there are also expenses on that, with that as well. As an example, sterilizing the town hall weekly, et cetera, et cetera. There are, I think Knowlton Hall is getting the same thing. We, as an example, this particular meeting, we are having Mike D'Amato's company help us facilitate. Well, that's $150 an hour. And they're doing all the meetings in town. So, these are expenses that we wouldn't necessarily be incurring during normal times. So the only one that can maybe speak to that would be Cheryl. Cheryl, do you have any thoughts on this? If there's anything that you would consider savings on the town side?
Like you said, we're spending more money because of all of the extra things we've had to purchase, the gloves for everybody and the masks when we can get them. All the road work, that's a big expense. We have, because everybody's home and bored and has time now, they're all cleaning out every room and shed and garage and outbuilding. And so the transfer station is just a mess. We broke the compactor, so that was a huge expense. I didn't get the bill yet, but to repair it was going to be $6,000, and they couldn't repair it. They had to replace the hydraulics in it or something. And so that's a huge expense we've had, in addition to all the extra hauling and then the extra containers. So I think we're actually spending more money than when we were open. We're keeping all of the offices running, so our utility bills will be the same. So no, I'm sorry, we have no savings.
Okay.
John,
So,
does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers that part of my question, but I still have a comment. So we don't have a quantification of this right now, but we've heard that we have less work being done by people, but we're continuing to pay them the same pay. So in my mind, you can't have both. If you want your raise for next year, that's fine. But if you're doing less work, you should be paid less for it now this year. Like I can't see doing both.
John, as a matter of practicality, how would that be instituted? How is that? What do you see as a practical way to deal with that?
There are positions that are probably hourly, that their salaries are determined based on X hours per week at X dollar per hour. Then you get paid for the hours you're working at your rate. If you're not working your full hours, you're not paid your full rate. As far as the union contracts, it's the same idea. Everything can be boiled down to a per hour value. I think we have to consider something along those lines. It's not right to expect your full pay if you're not able to do your full job, and the taxpayers are in the same boat.
Chuck, can I respond to that?
Yes, hold on one sec, Jim. Before you do, I want to step in just a bit. So John, I'm not trying to sway you from your thought there, because I think there's some validity to it. What I would say is the people that I'm aware of that are in sort of a municipal role at some level, from my experience, they're actually doing more work, not less work. It's different. I think in some cases it's more stressful because it's outside of people's comfort zones. As an example, this meeting, all of us here, with a few exceptions, this is my second or third meeting ever meeting in virtually. Now, obviously, I'm not getting paid, but there's a number of people that are, as an example, teachers who are trying to teach virtually. This is not necessarily inherent comfort zone. And they're also trying to do an awful lot of change to curriculum to still make things valid for their students. I know that paras in some of the other school districts are also being engaged to deal with trying to come up with resources for teachers to work with on virtually, et cetera, et cetera. So I have a little bit of familiarity with that. I also know at the town hall, we've got a whole bunch of people that are trying to function without interacting with each other, without having the support that they generally have right at their right or left hand. So they're trying to get a lot of things accomplished either remotely or with slightly less smoothness to their day. So I just think these are extraordinary times and everybody's struggling to do their job. And I think I would argue that most of them are trying to put or are putting more time in. Jim, do you have more to add?
Yes, just a little bit. This is Jim Longo. The governor, with his executive orders, has told us to keep our employees and continue to pay them based on the idea that the state promises the towns that they will not reduce the grants to the towns based on the fact that the schools are closed, and they will not reduce the town budget for 2 years based on the fact that they're in the middle of a biannual budget. And they said that their part of the deal is they promise to give the towns full payment if the towns promise to keep their employees employed, because the state would otherwise end up having to pay them through unemployment anyway. So they would prefer to do it this way, where instead of punishing the towns by taking away 30% of the allotment of money that they had guaranteed the towns, that the towns would maintain their employees, they would get their full 100%, and therefore the state would not be responsible for the unemployment.
I see.
That's all fine and good, but it's the state promising money that they don't generate. The state using the word revenue is insane to me. They don't earn, they don't create anything. All they do is take money from people who are creating. So yeah, they can promise us all they want, but the people they get their money from are hurting. How much unemployment do we have in this state? How high is it going to go? Something has to give. And if government is unwilling to give somewhere along the line, it only comes at the expense of the taxpayers. That's all I'm saying.
Yep, that was John Kopak, Valerie.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yep. All right.
Hi, Chuck. Can you hear me? This is Esther. I didn't want to interrupt earlier, but I dialed in late. I couldn't find the access code.
Okay.
Okay,
Hey,
I'm going back on mute.
Esther, do you have a comment or no? Just that you're here.
I think those are all valid points. I'm certainly concerned about taxpayers. Again, I'm still learning more about this. I don't think we have enough information. Some of the questions I had spoken with you earlier, like I hear the part about salaries have to be paid. Questions are, where are we seeing savings? And so to me, I like a granular approach to a budget. So I would think that it's a little bit earlier for them to be seeing savings on facility costs. I know some are going to go up, some are going to go down, but say as an example, is the school on an energy savings program where the school is on an unoccupied schedule? So they're going to be not having all the lights on, not having the same, turning the heat down, that kind of situation that you would expect or anticipate from that size footprint of a large building. So I'm listening, and I definitely understand everything John Kopeck is saying. The lines at some of the places where people are fighting for food insecurity, and some of the comments from people who have zero money coming in right now for whatever the reasons are. They're really struggling, as well as small business owners. And so it's a concern to me. It's a concern if we lose some of our larger taxpayers who are commercial businesses. I'll just give one small example. And as an example, the dairy bar, I know that's not one of the ones that I mentioned earlier to you on a side conversation, Chuck, but the dairy bar, their taxes are $80,000 just for a summer food business. So as these food businesses and other types of businesses like Brierley get impacted, it's going to impact what people have, for the overall budget. So I think everybody's being squeezed, and it's really difficult if we don't have some more granular numbers of where savings might come from. And maybe it's too early to know that, but we definitely don't want to wait 9 months to know that. We want to see some trending going on relatively soon, like before June, so we can make some decisions. Otherwise, it just looks like all costs are going up, up, and up, which just isn't going to work for people that are choosing between food and medicine. That's just some of the thoughts that I'm having as I'm listening to the conversations. Thank you.
Thanks, Esther. Just as a reminder to everyone, the agenda item that we're on right now is, we're talking about approving the budgets for the public hearing. These are not final budgets necessarily, but we're trying to put something in front of the voters, which would be at the public hearing, for them to hear what we're proposing and get feedback and get it ready for the referendum. Just to reassure everybody that's at this meeting, we have modified our budget calendar last meeting on the 14th, and it is our intention to try our darndest to actually put this budget to referendum by June 3rd, which is the referendum date. Now, if you're asking me my instinct tells me that this board, some group of the 6 of us will probably end up voting on this budget. But again, what we're talking about tonight is what we would be putting in front of the people at a public hearing. So this is not tonight's not the decision of what the budget is, but what we think is reasonable to put in front of the voters and be able to defend. So having said that, we haven't heard from Angie or from Garth. Do either of you have a comment?
This is Angie DeSanto. I remember when we had our meeting where we were telling the town and the school that they needed to come back with a redone budget, and they did. And then we voted to accept that. And we were all, it was pretty consensus. But I'm hearing Carl's point, and I'm usually the, kind of bleeding heart people here. Give everybody everything. But I realize, wow, it's not even like a recession or, hard times. This is totally life-changing for everybody. And it's going to be for the next year and a half, 2 years. Reality. Until you can get testing and you know where the virus is and you can locate it and minimize it, it is changing our lives. Everybody. So we can't tax our citizens up the yin yang, the people that can't afford it. Now, there is tax relief. I see it in a citizen every month, right? People can apply, you get a certain amount that a couple or a single or whatever, I forget what it is because I don't qualify for that. They can get tax relief, but that's a few, minimum income people. There are other people that are probably middle class and lost their jobs. Now they're in a boat where, anyway, so I would go along with really looking at the budgets and, cutting back. So.
Garth, are you able to speak?
Yes, because I can put my work on hold kind of. I do have things going on, so I'm not able to concentrate as well as I could when I was there. Chances are, no matter what I say, it's not going to really make much of a difference. And I definitely have a whole lot to say, but I'm not going to right now because it doesn't matter. But I suspect within the realm of things that we can do, the ultimate burden on your average person isn't going to make or break them. I don't like taxes any more than anybody else. I seriously don't. But I'd like to get something for my taxes. And I think in a town, you can see what you get much better than federal tax. So I'm not, I pay taxes, whatever. I don't complain. I think we get a lot of good people in this town doing a lot of good things. But in this, when we're talking about people can't afford it, if I had to guess, that's probably been the sentiment back in the 40s when my grandfather was a first selectman. He probably heard the same thing. People can't afford it. It's probably been the rallying cry for years. And not that it's wrong, because I know some people can't afford it. But I think when I hear that, I take it with a grain of salt. And what does it really mean? And I have more to say, but that's whatever. I'm more in line. I like what Angie said for the most part, but I can't disagree with Carl. I totally get that point of view. But again, the question is, what does it really mean when you look at the whole realm of things, from holding the budget line to doing nothing to the tax increases that we would experience if everybody got what they were requesting. What does that mean? What does it really mean in dollars and cents? And does it make or break people? I don't know. Rhetorical question.
Thanks, Garth. Judy, do you have a thought? Yep.
Yeah. So I'm listening to everybody's opinions here, and I mean,
Valerie,
when we sat down,
who is that speaking?
It's Judy
Austin. When we were talking about the budget and we were all together, that was a different circumstance. Right now, I don't think it's a really good idea to up the mill rates, basically because people are going to be hurting. We don't know where we're going with this. We don't know how long it's going to be. I can't see justifying any kind of increase until we really know what's going to happen here. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Judy.
Chuck, can I talk again, or my talking time is up?
Is this Esther?
I disconnected accidentally, pushing the wrong buttons because I don't know how to use my cell phone well. But sorry, I am back. Sorry about that.
All right, so this is Esther.
Can I just add one more thing? So
certainly,
I know. I hear what Garth is saying, and that he's not sure, like, what's true, what's not true, but I'll tell you that tomorrow morning is the food bank at Living Proof Church, and you can literally watch the parade of vehicles going in there because people are suffering from food insecurity, and people are definitely making choices between food and medicine and how to pay their taxes and how to pay their darn electrical bill. I'm the only person not worried about my electrical bill, but people are really, really suffering right now. So the people that think that's not happening, it's definitely happening. And then, as I mentioned, people that were business owners that had to close, like hairdressers and massage people or whatever, there's a lot of small businesses in town that have had to close and not be able to take clients. Those folks have no cash flow. So there is a lot of suffering, and when you go for 2 to 3 months without that kind of cash flow, you don't make it up, and you don't make it up with a $1,200 check either, because that just doesn't cover it. So, I'm kind of agreeing with what Judy is saying, that it's really difficult, and we also have to think about the last time we got together, circumstances were different. This whole emergency situation was premature. Like, we didn't know what was going to happen. So it's hard to say, well, 2 months ago we said this, and now we're faced with a completely different scenario. And some costs are going up. We can't control them, and or they've already been approved. Like, the $200K for E.O. Smith. So how much more can we add to that we can never go back on? If school costs increase, it's not like next year we can say, well, we'd like to decrease them now based on some other circumstance. We're not allowed to do that. So there's just so many factors here that are very, very complicated. That's all. But I just did want to say, if you don't think people are suffering is real, go watch what's going on at the food bank tomorrow morning, and you'll see it's real. Thank you.
Thanks, Esther. One of the things I want to remind everybody with Region 19 is that we pay our proportion. So this year, our portion of their budget went up 6.2%. Mansfield went down 0.7%, and Wellington went down 4.2%, and that's based on student populations. One of the interesting things that the projections that if you look at Region 19's budgeting, they have projections for years moving forward. What some people are responding to is that next year, our portion could go down significantly. And the projections are in the $600,000 range. That's, 2 mils worth next year. Now, we can't count on that. We can't plan on it this year, but that is a reality as the snapshot is today. So I expect that our budget next year will be able to take advantage of the realignment based on populations. But we can't count on that this year, but it's something to think about for next year. So again, what's on the table right now is approved budgets for the public hearing. So the question is, what budget do we want to put in front of the public? I guess I haven't spoken to my thinking. If I was being honest, my thinking is that we should go with the budgets that we last spoke of, which is the $156,000 increase for the school, the firehouse increase as they need to keep services as is, and the town budget up about $56,000. That would be my instinct to do that. However, I hear everybody's concern. I have the same concern. So what is it that we can do to put in front of the public hearing and see how people react? Just to give you a couple scenarios, if we kept everything as is, region 19, which is a given, if we decrease the Board of Education to 0 and we kept the general government budget the same, and including the firehouse, the mill increase would be essentially 1 mil. And then if we opted to Region 19 again, given no increase to the Board of Ed, no increase to the town government except for the firehouse, then we're looking at a 0.85 mil increase. The other option we have on the table, which I don't have the scenario because I don't think there's an appetite for it, is we also reduce the firehouse 71,000, and that means we get rid of EMTs. They've already stated that that's where it's coming from. It does not seem, in the environment that we've been in the last month or so, that getting rid of EMTs is going to go over real well. It doesn't seem like the right thing to do morally, given where we're at with the COVID. So anyway, again, the question is, I need somebody to make a motion as to what we move forward for the public hearing. We're putting together, we have to put together a report for the public hearing, the budget books. What do you think we should do? I need somebody to make a motion.
Chuck, this is Carl Falsgraf again.
Yep.
I'm willing to go with that budget, but after the public hearing, I'm not willing to bring that budget to a referendum, if that makes any sense. I'm willing to go to the public hearing and hear what the public says about it. But after the public hearing, if it's up to the Board of Finance to vote, which I think it will be, it's a 90% chance that we're going to make that decision this year. There's no way in the world that I could vote for a 1.5 mil increase this year. And I just want to add one thing, that I think that $71,000 for the fire department is essential, because one of government's functions is safety of the town, safety of its constituents, whether it's town or state or federal. And I just can't see us cutting that money.
Thank you. Judy?
I understand what Carl's saying, and if it comes to that point, I feel the same way. If we're gonna go with the budget the way we had it, but it goes to referendum and we have to vote, I'm not voting for it.
So let me just interject here. This is Chuck Funk again. Cheryl, this is a question for you. When we're putting together the town hearing budget books, if we decided at this meeting that we wanted the town to not go up, and we opted for the school to not go up, they have to react to that before we issue the public hearing notification, correct?
They have to react to it in that we would need to have budget books available to the public on April 27th.
So basically what we're saying is, or I think what you're saying is if we decide to say, okay, general government budget, cut the 56,000 out, and okay, school, we're going to ask you to cut the additional 156 out of your budget, that needs to be reflected in that public hearing document, correct?
In the books.
in the books.
Right, in the books on April 27th. They don't have to have it before you set the public hearing, but we have to have it in the books for April 27th.
Okay, so to my mind, if what I'm hearing is that there's no way we can vote for this particular budget as it stands, then we're not giving an honest public hearing because we don't know what the impact is going to be. We don't really know what the impact's going to be. So in other words, who's getting cut? What's getting cut? How's the school going to react? How's the town going to react? So I think if we're looking at honestly voting at a lower level than what we had already agreed to on March 12th, then I think we need to say that out loud now.
This is Carl Falsgraf again.
So,
Hold on, Judy. Carl has the floor.
The only problem with that is the Board of Ed would have time to negotiate with the teachers and non-certified people about decreasing their salaries after April, where that doesn't give them much time between now and the 27th to do that.
I guess my feeling on that, Carl, is that's just not going to happen in that time. So what would ultimately end up happening is if their budget gets reduced, they will go to their teachers and say, here is an option. If you all hold your salaries, we may be able to keep a teacher or two to do that. And I think that that's going to be an ongoing negotiation that we won't have an answer to. That's just not going to be a reality.
That's what I mean. If we went with this budget, maybe we would get input from the public asking us to cut it, which I would hope we would. But I'm just saying that they would have more time to negotiate with all the unions that he says he has to negotiate with if we went with this budget to the public hearing and made the cuts after the public hearing.
I think we're asking them to respond to a maybe. I think if we cut them, then they have to deal with it.
All right, that's fine by me.
Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, this is not my feeling. I would rather we don't cut the budget over what we did March 12th. But I think if where we're really heading is cutting the budget, then we have to give them time to respond, and we need to know what we're putting in front of the public is real and what its impact would be. It's like if we decided to cut the firehouse, 71,000 that they've asked for, then they will come back to us and say, okay, this is how we are going to do that. You're going to lose 2 EMTs and 2 shifts or something or other, whatever right. They say they would do. And I think it's the same thing with the school. The school may come back to us and say, okay, we're going to have to lose 2 teachers to meet this criteria. But in the meantime, their teacher base can rally and they then have a way to respond. They then say, oh, we're going to lose this teacher and that teacher. But if we all rally and say no salary increase, then maybe they can save those 2 teachers. I don't know. I'm just don't know how that works, but that would be my guess. I think if we go with this budget saying, oh yeah, it's going to go the way we all talked about it, and then at the 11th hour we say, nope, that's not what's going to happen, then I don't think we're giving the public an honest view of the direction we're going in.
Okay.
Can I make a comment, Butch Simpson?
Chuck, can I say what?
Hold on one sec, Butch. I think Judy was next.
Yeah, so Chuck, my whole feeling is when we talked about the budget last time, we were in a total different situation. Things were, okay. People weren't afraid where they were going to get their next meal or their medicine or pay the rent or the housing, whatever the case may be. this is after the fact that we're discussing this. And I'm really uncomfortable with tacking on a, pretty good mill rate, 1.5 right now, when people might not be able to afford it. And I'd rather have the public be able to have a say if they're in for this or not. I don't want this on me. If it comes down to all of us having to make the decision, that's why I said I would say no. I don't think it's just our decision.
Yeah, I
Chuck,
hear
am
what
I
you're
allowed to
saying,
speak it?
Judy. Hold on, Jim. So I agree with you. It would be my preference to have voters vote. That would be strongly my preference. Because I personally feel that if we were able to bring this to a referendum, I personally think that the budgets as presented would pass. That's my own personal feeling. But what I think we have to plan for is the 6 of us, whoever ends up being the voters that day, are going to be making that decision. That's what I think is going to happen. We are going to try not to do that, but so again, I think we need to be honest with what we're thinking. The next one to speak is Butch.
Okay. If we continue on and do nothing till we go to the public hearing, we have a meeting after the public hearing, which gives us the authority to add to the budget or subtract from the budget with no other thing than doing it. Okay. And the same thing will happen if we go to the thing of being turned down by the voters. We'd have the same problem where we'd have to do the cutting. Okay. That's how it works. You can't increase it. So you have to cut the budget if it's turned down. I don't know. I ain't got the governor's ear, but I don't know when this is going to be over where we can actually have a public hearing. It's going to be hard to have a public hearing with, let's say the town gets outraged and we have 100 people that want to come in on this conversation. Can we do that? Will it be unruly enough so we can't do what we need to do? I definitely believe we have to do some cutting somewhere. Everything we talk about, it affects somebody, okay? It hurts the town employees, the school employees, whatever else. If we take away from them, yes. But times have been good and we've been good to them. It's time that I think that the town worries about the town. And I have no idea how it would go if it can get to the people voting for it, which is the way it should be. But I don't think everything's going to be set by, June 3rd we can do it? Because Correct. It's just, there's going to be too much fighting going on between the political people wanting this and the political people wanting that, okay? There's been, I can't even say that much money that has been allocated to try and help this. And what I'm hearing that isn't going to be enough to get this country on its feet and keep it on its feet. So when you talk trillions and trillions of dollars, what we're talking here is peanuts, but it is a big deal here, okay? And we have that perfect right after the public hearing to either increase anything we want to or decrease anything we want. We have that right. And if for whatever reason we decide to do, let's say we want to cut it. I don't think there's anybody here talking wanting to increase it. And we do cut it by whatever seems to be a favorable amount between us. That would be what we're going to vote on, whoever the 6 people are or whoever does it. What I want to see is that they relax stuff so we can go to a vote. We go to the town hall and you vote your conscience. got to think that there's a lot of people that are hurting, okay? When I watch the TV and listen to our governor and I listen to our president, I don't know where you can say there's anything kind of good coming down the road. And I don't know how we can ask our town taxpayers to get hurt worse than they are right now. I don't know how many of you's ever been unemployed. You get working and then all of a sudden you get laid off. And now in them days, you got $45 for being on unemployment, okay? I haven't been on unemployment since 64, okay? So it pays a lot more now, but again, that's probably half of what they would get if they were working, okay? So it don't make a good thing at all. I think we definitely got to wait and do what we need to do to try and make this work. And I think we can wait to do any adjusting in the budget till we go after the public hearing, because we have the right after the public hearing to do whatever we want.
So Butch, what are you saying? Are you saying that you want to go forward with the budget that was proposed on March 12th? Or are you thinking along the lines of, as Carl had just earlier suggested, or are you saying that we reduce the budget now and see how people react to it?
I would say we go to the public hearing. We're close to what we're doing now. If somebody makes a motion to cut something or whatever, I think we should do that. But, talk about it and decide whether we want to do that or not. But all I'm trying to say is we still have the right to interject at the bottom of the ninth inning, to throw in the thing that we want to cut this budget by this, and everybody would have to react to it, because that's what you're going to get. If it fails, we're going to do the same thing afterwards. We're going to cut the budget some amount of money if it fails but that would be by the townspeople, and that's what I'd love to see, but I doubt it's going to happen because of the rules that are in force at the present time.
Okay, very
but
good.
We might be lucky enough that we could have a town meeting, okay?
Yep.
Put it to the town meeting. But then if we don't do no changing, it would go as the way it is now. And if we cut it at the end of the hearing, that would be what would go to the townspeople, okay? That's what we got that option yet to change the whole budget if we want to, but I don't think we've ever done that. I think maybe a few thousand maybe, but nothing that would be drastic as what we might have to do here or might want to do here. Okay, I've made my speech.
Thanks, Butch.
Angie Santo.
Hold on one sec, Angie.
Yep.
Just to respond to Butch briefly, one of his concerns in that was how the public hearing is going to work. The public hearing is going to work just like this. It's going to be a go-to meeting, and the public's going to be able to sign in. I can't pretend to know how we're going to manage it, but I believe this particular platform as it stands can take up to 250 people. Is that right, Mike? So, I think we probably can have a public hearing, and we will do our utmost to keep it orderly. And one of the advantages we have is that Mike is able to use the mute button. So we will make it orderly if it has to be. So Butch, that's how the public hearing is going to be, is just like this meeting.
Yes, right. But again, if they lift everything by that public meeting, then there would be a regular public meeting, right? With the voters sitting out in front of us.
Correct. And the public hearing is May 6th, and there's a stay at home until May 20th, I think, at this point, or at least.
Well, that's what they're saying. But there's also people that are very, very want to change it right now, okay? They're sick of this standing in line 6 foot apart, and you can't do this, you can't do that. Because we're used to being a free society, okay? Right now, we're not. But I'm just pointing out what's going to happen if we just keep going the way we are right now. Okay.
Yeah, I
So
think
we
the
have an
reality
option.
is, I was going to say, sorry, Butch. What I was going to say is the reality is this is going to be a virtual public hearing. I just know it is. So I don't think it's worth, bantering about on that particular topic. Angie, if you can wait
Yeah.
1 second. Jim Longo was next to speak. So I wanted to have Jim say his piece.
Okay,
Jim,
thank you
right
very
now-
much, Chuck. I know I'm not a taxpayer in Ashford, so I apologize in advance.
Very good.
What?
You're fine.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, all righty. 51 of our employees are residents of Ashford. That's over 100 adults. That's 51 families that you're going to be asking if you do decide for them not to take their pay raises. That'll be 51 families in Ashford. You're asking to give a couple $1,000s each up. So just as a bit of information, that's over 100 residents. So I wanted to say to you that I really would think that maybe you could go to the town meeting with the current budget, and maybe at the town meeting, it might generate some sort of compromise.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Angie, you had a thought?
Yeah, I was just wondering, when did we have the budget, the referendum last year? What date was that? We put it off, I know.
I think it was actually June 2nd last year.
Okay, so we didn't put it off that much. It was just a month or so. Because I was wondering if we should just put it off until we can find out more information about what's going on with the virus and the spread and et cetera. I don't
Yeah,
know.
so we've just to answer that, Angie, we've already, the referendum was supposed to be May 5th or 7th or something this year. And so we put it off a month.
Right.
Per Ned Lamont's order.
Right.
And we decided as a town to actually take advantage of that because our board at our last meeting accepted the idea that we wanted to try to give voters the opportunity, if at all possible, to go to referendum. The last date that we can do that and still get the mill rate set and for tax bills to go out as usual is in early June. And the third was the date that we could come up with to not conflict with the second, which is the presidential primary.
Okay. And the other thing is, what was I just thinking of? Yeah, I'm concerned, the information that Esther gave about, for instance, the dairy bar and what they pay in taxes. Businesses in town are either out or doing poorly or, less. The dollar store is doing great. That's about it. So, so our grand list or whatever it's called in terms of, not the grand list because that would still be the same, but what businesses can pay in taxes. If we don't get $80,000 from the dairy bar, right, in taxes, that means the residents have to make that up somehow. How are we going to do that?
What we're talking about is tax collection, right? So the
Yeah,
grand list
yeah. If you don't get $80,000 in taxes paid to the town of Ashford from the dairy bar, somebody has to make that up in order for our budget to be complete. Isn't that right, Cheryl, or whoever would know that?
Well, if they don't pay their $80,000 next fiscal year, we'll be just short $80,000. It will still be owed, but it will be late, and that's money we don't have to use to buy the services and the items we need. If they go out of business and then we don't have them on the grand list anymore,
right?
The grand list goes down and we lose the $80,000, and we know we're losing it.
Right. Therefore, the residents have to pay more in taxes to meet what the budgetary requirements are to get up to that total of 8 million in the school and, whatever it is, 3 million in the town, or whatever. So that's concerning, and it's going to be more and more and more. I think this is a different world. I think things are not going to get better. They're going to get worse, and we have to be reality based here.
So Angie, it sounds to me as though what you're suggesting then would be to go forward to the public hearing with no increase to the town, no increase to the school.
I guess I'd be willing to wait to see what the town says. And if we get people to say, go for it anyway, and whatever, we're willing to buck it up and do what we need to do, then I'd vote for it. But I don't see how people are going to be able to do it. It's a different world. It's not like, oh, I don't want to pay more in taxes. I hate to pay more in taxes. It's a different world. Esther's saying, middle-class people are going to food banks because they don't have money coming in. People are losing their businesses, losing their jobs, unemployment's skyrocketing. Different world. So.
Chuck, this is Carl. I'm willing to make a motion.
Carl, can you wait 1 second?
Yep.
Thank you. John, you raised your hand. Do you have a comment?
I did. That was John Lippert, or this is John Lippert, I should say. Thank you, Chuck. This is on the agenda. This is not really a time for non-members of the Board of Finance to speak, but I appreciate the opportunity. I think you've made some important points and some very emotionally meaningful comments, especially Esther's regarding the food bank. Those are our neighbors after all. But I think the response is wrong. If a number of people have lost their job, which obviously the people have, the reaction should be to provide unemployment and other services. The reaction should not be to decrease services from the town and the school by decreasing taxes. Those people are hurting, but they'll be hurting more when their child's class gets bigger and get less attention from the teacher, and they'll be hurting more if there is no local EMT service. I think you're misapplying this solution to a very important problem. I think you would compound the problem rather than.
Chuck, this is Esther. I just wanted to be put in queue to speak at some point. I did dial back in. I keep hanging the phone up by accident. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Esther. Hold on 1 second, Esther. John, can you finish?
Yes, just did. Thank you very much to the Board of Finance.
Thanks, John. Esther, did you have a comment?
Oh, most certainly. So I wasn't trying to be emotional. I was trying to give a for instance for people who do not observe the suffering that people in our town. If I wanted to be emotional, I could talk about the 4 cats in my house because we are fostering animals because people right now can't afford to feed their animals. So that would be a little bit more emotional. But I'll actually point out the emotion that I hear other people, and that would be to say, if we cut the budget, we're cutting teachers, we're affecting Ashford families, and we're cutting EMTs. Because if I was managing a budget of the school and or of the fire department, I certainly wouldn't cut the most critical operations. Again, I will speak to and ask a question in a non-emotional manner, which is, are there any schedules for the school from an energy conservation perspective or custodial services that are unoccupied that would show savings in the facilities arena? Because whenever I ask questions about that building, which is not an insignificant building. Nobody can speak to cost of maintenance on the HVAC equipment, cost of custodian, not the actual custodians, but the supplies, etc. Certainly, I've never seen anything that spikes out electrical costs or other utility costs. So if you're looking for cost savings, you know, Chuck yourself, you have asked about equipment, including Apple computers, Chromebooks, etc., software for badging people in, lots of software like PowerSchool, that it really doesn't matter if it's compatible with E.O. Smith, Wyndham Tech, or School of Performing Arts. It really doesn't matter if PowerSchool is compatible with anything. But software costs, again, those are soft costs, but we never hear about those. What we hear about is the emotion, which is we're going to have to cut teachers, we're going to have to hurt families, and we're going to have to get rid of EMTs so that we can't take care of sick or hurt people. So that's what I have to say to that. Thank you, Chuck.
Thanks, Esther.
Hey, Chuck, this is Jane Urban. Would it be possible for me to have a chance to speak?
Certainly. Yeah, Jane, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Jane Urban from the Board of Ed. I hope you can hear me, sorry. I just want to, I think Esther hung up again, but wanted to respond to some of the things that she said. Number one being that when we looked at the budget after the initial meeting with the Board of Finance, I always start all of my comments at the Board of Ed meetings about how much I hate technology. So that's the first place I cut. And I recommend cuts. That's the first place I go. And we've already done all of that for next year. So at this point, we are down to talking about actual people and positions if we have to further reduce the budget. I mean, we already went through the budget and took out everything that we thought we could do without in order to preserve people and teachers. I think also when we're talking about the hardship on the town, I think people are leaving out the children and the hardship that kids are experiencing right now. I have 3 children. They go to Ashford School. I am currently working full-time from home and attempting to do some sort of teaching to them. And they are missing, not only whatever educational opportunities they would normally get, social development. The exposure to two of my kids this year have teachers who I just think are amazing. And I am sad that they are missing that. Academically, I know my kids will be fine. Socially, they'll be fine. But there are other kids that won't and will need help recovering from this. And those are the kids I'm worried about. When we have to cut teachers and cut services through the school, that is what I'm concerned about. And I certainly expected coming into this meeting that the discussion would be about possibly reducing the school budget further from what was agreed to in March. I did not expect that it would be to hold it at last year's numbers. That, as an Ashford resident, as a taxpayer, is shocking to me because we every year accept this E.O. Smith increase and just go with it. And I know we have no choice and everyone talks about that, but we are looking at a 0.75 mil increase from the E.O. Smith budget. And the Ashford school budget was originally proposed in March or agreed to in March at a 0.5 mil increase. So the biggest part of our budget increase, we have no control over and we just have to roll over and accept. But as an Ashford resident, I cannot roll over and accept the impact that a 0% increase would have on our kids and our school next year. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Hey, just to respond to Jane as a bit of a clarification, one of the things that is really hard to get all of our heads wrapped around is it seems like Region 19, just went up a boatload. I just want to reiterate, when you look at Region 19's budget, they actually reduced their budget this year by 100 and something thousand. I have to look at my paper here. Yes, so they actually reduced their budget by 100 and something thousand. And again, the clarification is because of the student breakout, we are paying more this year. So again, as a regional board of ed, they actually understood what was coming at them and reduced their budget this year. Their budget went down. It just happens to be that our portion is going up because of the population differences that have played out for this year. So I want to make that clarification that I think Region 19 and their budget's different than Ashford School. I think everybody has to understand that their budget is a very different animal than Ashford School's budget. So anyway.
Thank you. Yeah, this is Jane again. Thank you, Chuck. I do understand that. I do just want to point out that I guess from my perspective, I mistakenly look at the E.O. Smith budget as an impact on my taxes, not a percentage of students and blah, blah, blah. And if their overall went down, but our share went up, it still feels like it went up to me. And I know that's not accurate, but that's how it feels as a taxpayer.
Okay, thank you. So again, I'm just going to remind everybody, because of the nature of this particular meeting, what's on the table right now is approved budgets for public hearing. So we have to make a motion as to what we're going to put into our public hearing budget books to contemplate.
Carl Falsgraf, I'll make a motion.
So, Carl, what is your motion specifically? What budgets are we putting forward?
Well, I'll just precede my motion by a quick comment. Is since we can raise the budget after the public hearing, then we can wait to hear if there's a response. My motion is going to be what I said originally. Is that I would hold the Board of Ed budget and the Board of Selectmen budget to last year's budget, except for the $71,000 for the fire department, because we're in charge of public safety, and that's very important. And we got to have an increase for E.O. Smith we have no control over. So basically, my motion is to hold the selectmen's budget and the Board of Ed budget at last year's budget, except for the fire department increase to cover the loss of Eastford. Hello?
Hey, Carl.
Did you get that?
We got it. I think we're waiting to see how somebody responds.
I'll second it.
So,
Butch
Carl,
Simpson.
Valerie, Carl made the motion and Butch seconded it.
Yeah.
And I just want to say again what Carl had said. If we go to the public hearing and we hear that everybody is willing to absorb the cost and wants to do that, then we can, after that meeting, we stop and open up another meeting, and we can put back whatever we feel is the right amount to put back on either budget, the selectmen's budget or the school's budget.
I have something to say.
Go ahead, Angie.
Well, I just was wondering if we take a vote on this. Garth gave up his vote. I just wondered if that would make a difference.
I'm sure that it would, but we've gone over that bridge already.
Okay. No.
I'd like to add another comment. This is Carl, but somebody else was coming in.
Go ahead, Carl.
Well, I really think the Board of Ed has time to negotiate with their union staff. And Dr. Longo said there would be 51 teachers that were going to get a pay cut if that happened. But there's according to state records, if our population is 4,000, there's 400 people that are laid off at least with no income, and a whole bunch more with no income because they own a small business. I think that they could make that work without cutting 3 teachers.
Are there any other comments?
Chuck, this is Esther.
I do.
Oh,
One second.
I hear Mr.
Go ahead,
Kovac.
Esther.
No, with EO Smith cutting their budget over 100K, I can't imagine they were cutting teachers. Were those facility costs, or do you recall what the reductions were? Because I don't remember that. I just had that question because I can't imagine at any level we want to see teachers unemployed. So I wondered how they were able to do that. Maybe they fired the Latin department. I don't know, but I'm just wondering, how did EO Smith affect a cost reduction without affecting the teachers that were available? Because certainly nobody's advocating that, but it makes it sound like that when we talk about controlling costs.
Esther, it's a fair question. I don't have an honest answer. So I don't have the granular level of understanding of where their cuts came from. I feel in essence very powerless about that particular budget. What I do respond to is the fact that they were reading the tea leaves and did find a way to reduce their budget. And I have a feeling that our 4 representatives really acted on Ashford's behalf, knowing that we were going to take a hit based on the numbers. So that's my thought on that.
Okay. Thank you. I look forward to Mr. Kovac's comments. I'm going on mute, and sorry I have cut off line several times.
No worries. John?
Thanks, John Kopek. A few things. Just to get some perspective from business owners, specifically small business owners and very small business owners like myself. It's an interesting ballgame because what you hear on the news is not the reality. There's no money for us. The funds are already depleted, and they were never going to sole proprietorships anyway. So very small businesses with only a handful of people, they're not getting any relief out of this. They don't qualify for unemployment. I don't necessarily have to be shut down, but I also kind of have to be shut down. So I'm still working, but I'm not getting paid. And I don't know if I ever will at this point for the work that I'm doing now. But there's no relief out there for us. Car insurance companies are giving breaks on premiums. Does not apply to businesses. So the other thing is mill rates have a different impact on businesses than they do on people. We pay property taxes on anything that we own as far as property, just like you guys do. The mill rate's gone up significantly in the last 4 years, but as a business owner, we have to pay the mill rate on the value of anything that we own. Every hammer, every screwdriver I own is taxed from the day that I buy it at the mill rate based on a percentage of its value until the day I get rid of it. And I've got hammers that I've had for over 20 years and I'm still paying taxes on them. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing is I understand, look, this is difficult no matter how you slice it. I think on the school side, I think, I know the governor has said lots about shared pain. I think maybe we should deal without a vice principal for a year while we get through this process. And it's not ideal and it's not a good way to go, but if it preserves teachers, then it preserves teachers. There's still a possibility that we won't be back in school at the beginning of next year, and we'll be doing distance learning for then too. Who knows at this point? The other thing is in the state of Connecticut, we're in a rough spot, and we're in a relatively unique spot where Connecticut never really recovered from the recession over a decade ago. So you combine with that the binding arbitration in this state, it's a perfect storm. We never recovered to begin with, and now there's virtually no chance of getting givebacks from unions, and we have no recourse in that. So, maybe it's our fault for not being involved more in the process along the way over the years, but there's nothing we can really do about it at this point. And the bottom line is the only thing we can impact.
Thanks, John.
Put
Any other?
Simpson with a quick comment whenever you got a chance.
Oh, my God.
Sure. Go ahead, Butch.
The other day I was watching TV, and I haven't seen this again, but there was a guy on. They were talking to him, and I don't know where he was from, but he said the whole United States is going to be lucky if 50% of small business survives this when we start trying to go back to, what we were originally at. If that happens, like the guy said, the town is not going to be able to pay its bills without taking it out of our fund because people aren't going to be able to pay their taxes. It's just a simple thing. So we're looking at a double-edged sword that we have no idea which end of the sword we want, okay? Because it's just so iffy right now. Everything is iffy. Whether this disease will reappear itself. Some people are predicting that. Others are saying everything's going to be all right in a couple weeks. But I have no idea. You're talking millions and millions of people that are involved with this. And we have nothing to look at to say, oh, this is the way we should go. We got just what we're hearing everybody say. And who knows when the United States is even going to try to get back. So we've got to be very careful of how we spend money, okay? Because if we make these things, like the school, we got to fund it at that rate next year, okay? And if we were having a real bad time, that is going to be what is the bottom line. I'm interested in hearing, and I wish it would be a public hearing where people can stand up and say what they want other than trying to talk into a telephone. I know what happened. I was off the air for a while here just because my battery went dead, okay, in the thing. So people are a little, I think the younger generation isn't, but the older generation is very afraid of trying to use the phone for this. I don't know if we'll ever get a real feeling of what the people really feel at, but that's what we got to do. And I think the major decision we make has to be after the thing. I would support Carl's motion here, and we can always add to it if the argument is that's the way the townspeople want it. And if it goes the other way, then we've done what they want. But it's a real tough situation to be in. A lot of us probably right now wish we weren't on the Board of Finance, so our neighbors don't get mad at us. But that's all right. That's why we love this job. But that's all I wanted to say in there is the people are predicting gloom and doom, and when they do that, they never back on the TV, okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Butch. I think we might be ready for a vote.
I'm ready.
What's on the table is reducing the schools increase to zero, reducing the town's increase to zero, except for the Ashford Volunteer Fire Department, which is $71,536. The impact on the mill rate, if we do that, is going to be 0.85 above what we did last year. So if we go forward with this motion, I believe it gives both the school and the town an opportunity to give us the impact. And then at our public hearing, we can then respond with the impact that's that this is going to have. So I think we should be ready to have a vote unless, John, did you have something else you wanted to say?
I have a point of order. Do we have a second yet?
Yes, Butch.
Yes.
Okay, I missed that. Thank you.
Yeah, yep. Carl was the first and Butch was the second. We've just had discussion about whether to move forward with this. What I would say is I would be more comfortable putting together the budgets as they were proposed. But I think if this is where we think the vote is actually going, I think we should hear how it's going to impact for the public hearing. So, I think when this comes to actually voting, I will vote in favor of this motion because I want to see what the impact would be and how the impact is projected to the people. And then at the public hearing, I think we all have to listen really carefully to what people, and I mean all people, are really saying. So I think the public hearing becomes very, very important. Are we ready for a vote?
Butch
All in
Simpson
favor?
says yes. Butch, yes.
I've got one yes,
Carl Falsgraf, yes.
2 yeses,
No, Angie DeSanto.
I wasn't seated, so I'm just being quiet.
Who was that? Who was that?
That
No,
was
Esther.
Esther.
I was not seated, so I'm just listening.
Judy, your vote?
No.
Let's see, who else do
And
we
the
have?
reason, Chuck, the reason no is I don't know how many people are going to be able to make this public hearing. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
John Colfax?
Jesse, I'm a yes, and I just want to make a comment, what Judy was just saying. I hope that we get more people other than the same handful of the same people that come to our meeting talk. So we
That's
can
what
hear
I'm feeling.
more of a spread of the town people.
So
I have a question.
Go ahead, Carl.
Well, I had a question for Judy. She said she wanted to cut the budget. Well, we can add to it, but if she said she wasn't going to vote for the budget as it is after the public hearing, then why wouldn't she vote for these cuts and we can add back in? I don't understand that no vote, that's all.
Probably because I lost part of the conversation.
All right, so on the table is a motion to cut the school to 0, cut the town to 0, increase with the firehouse at 71,000. So all in favor?
So we're doing this.
I thought we already, didn't we already vote?
Excuse me.
We didn't finish
Hold on
the vote.
1 second. Hold on, Valerie.
Yes, you had Butch vote, Carl voted, Jesse voted, Angie voted, Judith voted, but what about John? You've had them vote individually, so what about the rest of the people voting?
Yeah, so John is not seated, so he's an alternate.
Oh, okay. So everybody voted?
And Garth is also Valerie. Garth is also not seated because Butch is seated for Garth.
Oh, okay.
So the last one to vote is me. And I guess I'm in favor of this motion, so I'm a yes for this motion because I think I want to see what the impact is going to be, and then I think the public hearing is going to be where we actually determine what we're going to go forward with. So I think, does that make it 4 yeses and 2 noes?
4 yes, 2 noes.
Yes.
The motion passes.
I just want to make one quick comment on this, Chuck, is this Butch Simpson again. this will give us a chance to see what the town feels. The people that want to come and talk on the telephone, if that's the way it's got to be, and we'll have to gauge it from what we're hearing from the public.
Thanks, Butch.
Could I ask the question?
Go ahead, Valerie.
I'm sort of confused between this public hearing and the referendum. When you present what you just made a motion to present, you're just going to present those figures, but you're not going to tell the public that earlier on another budget that was sort of talked about. Is that it? You're just going to present the budgets from last year, right? Is that it?
So for the public hearing, what we're doing is we're presenting, what we have to do is present the budgets to the public. We have to defend the budgets that we're putting in front of the public, and then the public has the opportunity to respond. So in this case, if enough people respond that they're not happy that the school's budget was cut, as an example, as much as it was, we get an opportunity to hear the public's response, and we are then able to respond to that. We can either increase, in this case, their budget if that's what the overwhelming public response is. We could.
But they wouldn't know what the other budget proposals were, what the cuts. They wouldn't know there were any cuts, right?
I am sure that will be expressed by the members that are staying attuned to what the budgets were, because the budgets are put online as time goes on. People can view them through their changes. So what the public would have the ability to view, if they were so inclined, was the budget that the school proposed, the budget that the school responded to when we told them to cut 220,000, the budget that they ended up with 181,000. All of those documents are available for the public to view if they choose to.
Okay, I got it.
And so what we're doing is we're putting together a public hearing document that is going to reflect these draconian cuts, and we want to see how the public responds. I think it's a more honest way to get a pulse of the town than going into the public hearing with a rosy scenario and then saying, oh, sorry, we don't feel that anymore. Now we're going to cut everything. And they just won't have time to respond.
Okay.
So I think this is a more honest way to get an honest feel of what the public can support.
Chuck, a good explanation, Butch.
Thanks, Butch. The next agenda item is set the date and approve the notice for public hearing. So we need a motion. Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong. We need a motion to set the public hearing date for May 6th in a go-to meeting format. You need your speaker on.
Sorry, I'm multitasking. Yes.
Okay, so I need a motion from somebody to set the date for May 6th for the notice for the public hearing.
Jesse Burnham speaking. So moved.
Thank you, Jesse. Do I have a second?
Judy Austin, second.
I don't think there's much discussion. All in favor?
Aye. Aye. Butch Simpson.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Thank you. In the agenda, we have a second opportunity for public comment. Is there anybody that would like to comment?
I'm the only one left, right, Chuck? Look,
Paul
first I wanted
Varga.
to oh yeah, Paul Varga, sorry, Valerie. I wanted to thank John Lippert for being honest at the beginning and talking about all the stuff that's going on. I know I'm a small representation of the public in the town, so, but that question has come up a lot, about where the savings are and where the savings aren't. I understand what the governor did, and he kind of tied our hands as a town and as a board of ed and at the superintendent level. I don't believe anything the governor says. So when it comes to finances about how they're going to pay it back later, I don't trust them. This is a tough time, and I'm glad to see that the Board of Finance is thinking seriously about all the impact that it already is having on the town and businesses and the townspeople. I do worry that, as somebody pointed out, when it comes time for the public hearing, that people aren't going to be able to even have access to it. Not that they don't want to, but they may not even have it, with all that's going on. So like I said in the previous meeting, I'm glad that we're at least trying to wait for a vote if we can. I don't think it's going to happen either. But as far as Dr. Longo's comments about the teachers and the 51 staff that live in town, I think everybody in town, whether you're employed by the town or a private industry or whatever it may be, has to take a long, hard look at what they're doing and what's happening. You know, Esther's pointed out that the food bank lines are long, and there are lots of people that we don't even know about that are struggling. And I'm lucky so far. I'm still employed, but if that changes, that it could change any day. That's a huge impact. And to talk about even a mill increase, which we're talking about right now, is a huge impact for me because I own a business as well. So, you know, there's a lot of things for everybody to consider as you guys move forward and girls move forward. And I'm glad to see that you guys and girls are talking about it, because I'm legitimately worried. And I think that it's hard for people to swallow that to take that big cut and say we can't do it. But right now we can't afford it, and that's the truth. Is that when people say they can't afford it, they just can't afford it right now. They don't have the money. So thanks, appreciate it, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thanks, Paul. Anybody else want to speak during opportunity for public comments?
This is Jane Urban. Could I have another chance?
Yes, Jane.
Okay. I just want to say that I don't agree with the decision that was made tonight, but I do understand that you guys are in an especially tough situation, that, you know, you're the decision makers on this for the town, and possibly without electorate input like you usually get. But I do honestly feel very concerned for the school and for my children, and especially because I fear that there are members on this board who don't have an open mind and won't go into whatever sort of public meeting we have willing to hear the other side or people with a differing position. There are members of the Board of Finance who show up to every meeting ready and interested in only ever approving a 0% increase for the school's budget on an annual basis when things are not as tough as they are this year. So I just would ask, please go into the public meeting with an open mind and be prepared to hear the support that I think exists for our school. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. And in defense of the board, and I hear what you're saying, and I understand that there is, I think, a legitimate perception of that. It has been my experience that I think this board is more open-minded than sometimes its public perception. We have worked very hard. I know I specifically have, and I certainly think the former chair of this board also worked to make sure that all voices were heard. And I think when push comes to shove, it has been my experience that this board has been surprisingly responsive to whatever the majority is. I don't believe that anybody comes into this with an automatic no. I think, I honestly believe no matter what flavor you're looking at on this particular board, we are all Ashford citizens. We've all had children in school or whatever. So I continue to impress upon my members to keep an open mind, and I may not say it necessarily in public like this, but certainly behind the scenes when I speak to the people on my board, I always remind them and ask them to please keep an open mind. Any other comments from the public?
I just have something to Angie DeSanto. This go-to meeting situation, I can only see 6 people at any one time. Is that the general way that it's functioning?
Mike, can you respond to that? I think there's a way for you to see everyone. I see everyone on my screen.
Is it because I'm on an iPad?
It may be, can you hear me okay? It may be because you're on an iPad. The best way to do it is to use the view option that shows active cameras only, so that you're not taking your screen space up with folks that are only connected via audio.
It's a choice somewhere? Oh,
yeah,
everyone?
It's at the top of the screen, right, Mike?
Yeah, but she's on an iPad. I'm not sure what that looks like. We can try to troubleshoot that offline.
Oh, well, I guess I could go to a computer, I guess, next time.
Okay, good. Thanks, Angie.
Same for me.
Thank you.
I believe that one of the other reasons why we use go-to meeting is it does allow, I think, up to 25 squares. So you should be able to have enough people if you have enough active cameras.
Great. Thank you. Next.
Chuck?
Yes.
Chuck, before you change the agenda, I just wanted to say 2 things. And one of them was,
this is Esther.
I don't know. Sorry, Esther, dial back in. I wanted to acknowledge the staff of Ashford School, everything they're doing to make sure that children are being fed right now. And they've even extended that to students of E.O. Smith or other, high schools where the families can't drive to the school, but they have a child that is in the education system, somebody under 18, K through 12 or 0 through 12, whatever they say nowadays. But it's really, really important. And the fact that they're doing such a great job, it's really helping families. So I just wanted to say that because I don't know if it got mentioned earlier, but they're delivering 2 meals a day to any family that has a student in school. And at Easter time, I know not everybody celebrates Easter or Passover time, but they made colored eggs, and they've just been going above and beyond to help the children and the families right now. So I just wanted to say that. That's all.
Thank you, Esther.
Chuck, I'd like to speak.
Who is that?
John Lippert.
John, go ahead.
Thank you, Esther, for highlighting that information. And earlier when I suggested emotionality, I meant that your comments made me feel emotional, not that you were using emotion in any way. I've been mad maybe 3 or 4 times in my life, and this is one. I think y'all have done an extraordinarily good job of thinking about the difficulties that the people in our town are in, and I think you've applied exactly the wrong direction of approach. But you have. So hopefully we will be able to change your minds at the public hearing. See you there.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chuck.
Next agenda item, appointment of auditors for the 2019-20 fiscal year. So I need a motion to, Cheryl, again, I think I'm right on this. We just need somebody to make a motion to have King & King and Associates represent us for the audit firm for next year, correct?
Correct.
So
Okay.
does Judy.
This year, 1920.
Yes, I'm sorry, for 1920. Yep. So Judy Austin made a motion to accept King & King.
Second.
Appoint King and Associates LLP.
Yep.
Second,
do I have
Angie
a second?
DeSanto.
Who's the second?
Angie DeSanto.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Jesse, I know we just asked you 2 days ago. I left it in there because I don't want to forget annual town report. I'm assuming you don't have anything, but if you do, now's the time.
Correct. I have nothing new to add.
Okay, very good. Agenda items for the next meeting. I don't know yet. I'll come up with something if we need to have the meeting on the 23rd.
I'm sorry. Did
Go
you
ahead, Cheryl.
Did you approve the legal notice?
So what do we have to do specifically?
Do you want me to read it? You just have to approve it.
Yep.
Legal notice for the public hearing Wednesday, May 6, 2020, 7:30 p.m. Knowlton Memorial Hall, 25 Pompey Hollow Road, Ashford, Connecticut 06278. The electors and citizens qualified to vote in town meetings of the town of Ashford, Connecticut are hereby notified and warned that a public hearing will be held at the Knowlton Memorial Hall, 25 Pompey Hollow Road, Ashford, Connecticut on Wednesday, May 6, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. The public hearing will be for the purpose of receiving information regarding the proposed fiscal year 2020-2021 town budget. Copies of the proposed budget can be obtained in the office of the town clerk, which of course we may have to amend. Dated at Ashford, Connecticut, this, whatever day today is, the 16th day of April 2020. Charles Funk, Chairman, Ashford Board of Finance.
So the only thing I think we might want to modify on that is the fact that it's not going to be at Knowlton Hall. I mean, we can label it Knowlton Hall, but it's going to be a go-to meeting.
Yeah.
I think you have to say that.
I think we're going to have to say that it's going to be a go-to meeting and we have to have access to that meeting with that notice. Just like our agendas, right?
Right, we can't. So how about to be held virtually, because we don't know at this point if it will be GoToMeeting or Zoom.
Okay, so we will have a virtual meeting. I don't think there's any way possible that we're going to have it at Knowlton Hall, correct?
I don't think there is, yeah.
Right, so I think we have to just say that it's going to be a virtual meeting. And how do we get the notice out, since this is our notice? When are we going to determine what's the meeting format? Do we know? And why isn't it go-to meeting? Is there a reason?
Because if someone else has the date and I haven't cleared it with Michael yet.
Okay, all right.
Angie DeSanto, I have an idea. Could we say that virtual meeting details on the website, town website?
The meeting information will have to be on the notice, so I'll ask Michael.
It has to be that specific?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's how people get into it.
Yeah, so I think we can pass a motion to accept the notice, but I think we're going to have to fine tune the language and get that to Valerie for our minutes.
Okay.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
I am.
Chuck, I have a question.
hold on,
What's
guys.
wrong with
Esther?
GoTo? Why isn't GoTo preferred? Why are we talking about Zoom?
We have not scheduled it yet because we haven't passed it. So we don't know if Mike D'Amato's company has that slot available to us.
Okay, because I've been hearing a lot of security issues with Zoom, and I think GoTo may be a more stable platform. That's all. Okay.
I think that would be our preference. We just don't know yet. Right, Cheryl?
Correct.
Isn't Mike here on this meeting right now?
Yes, he is, but I'm not sure that he's in charge of the schedule.
Okay.
Mike?
So right now I've been trying to keep the date, track of the date. You guys are looking for, this is for the hearing, which would be on May 5th.
It would be both a public hearing and then a meeting immediately following.
Which is May 6th.
May 6th, right, sorry.
That's a Wednesday.
Same day.
So
meeting.
so Wednesday, May 6th, and it would be at 7 p.m.?
7:30.
Okay. So as of right now, I don't see anything else on the calendar, so I could probably get that link to you, Cheryl, tomorrow or Monday or whatever you'd like it.
Okay, the sooner the better, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Okay, so Cheryl, that sounds to me, thank you, Mike. That sounds to me like we can then use the language of GoToMeeting and get a specific link attached to it so that we can avoid some complexity. So I guess we need a motion to accept the notice as Cheryl is going to invent it when she sends it to Valerie.
I just invented that one because we didn't have it.
So moved, but I have a question.
Go ahead, Carl.
All right, I'll move to accept it as amended, or Cheryl makes it up. But I have a question. How are we going to verify that they're residents of town? Because that's going to get packed from the Board of Ed people.
This is open to, because it's a budget, it's taxpayers and electors. So, and it's a public meeting anyone can go to.
Yeah, but we're gonna hear from a bunch of people, like the teachers that came last time. I'm not sure all of those teachers that were at our meeting were residents of Ashford.
I think it's a fair concern, Carl, and I don't know if Mike D'Amato has any thoughts, if he's been involved in any other town meetings where verification of the public has been required.
May I answer part of that?
Go ahead, John.
Thank you. John Lippert, Board of Ed Chair. The teachers that spoke at the prior meeting, especially the one that read the statement, are town residents. However, we will remind them or alert them that just town residents should address the board at that time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to Mike D'Amato. Mike, have you experienced a meeting where the public verification is a concern?
So we've had a number of public hearings, but we've not run into situations where we haven't been able to verify. You know, most of the time the folks have been talking. We've known who they are, but we will have a discussion internally about the best way to do that, and I can get back in touch with you on what our plan is.
Okay, Mike, thank you. Carl, does that answer your question? I think it's a valid concern, and we'll have a plan for when that meeting happens.
Okay, very good.
All right, thank you. Good pickup on your part. That's nice to not have to deal with that in the moment. So anyway, we had a motion to accept the notice as Cheryl's going to create it. And I think, Angie, did you second?
Nobody seconded it.
I could.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay,
Judy.
Judy second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, Butch.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Thank you, Cheryl. Remarks for the good of the board?
One quick thing, during the meeting, my cell phone went dead. So I bagged my regular phone and it was just as clear and good as the cell phone. So anybody that has a regular dial-up phone can participate in these meetings.
Wow.
That's very good. Thank you, Butch. I didn't know that. That's good information. Thank you. Any other
only
remarks?
happened.
Chuck, this is Angie.
Hold on. Yeah, who's this?
Angie?
Angie?
Yeah, I was just wondering, in the notice, do we want to write a virtual meeting accessible by phone or device?
Yeah, so Angie, I believe what Cheryl's going to do is she'll put together a notice that has the same type of information in it as our agenda, so that people will be able to get at it both ways. It'll look almost identical to our agenda.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Carl, you're up.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, Angie.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Butch.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you all. Mike, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chuck.
Cheryl, Karen, thank you for being involved.